going to go through some examples together here of the quadratic formula. So first of all, if you haven't done so yet, you do need to get that quadratic formula memorized by playing that song. As annoying as it might be, it helps you get it memorized, which, as I said in the previous video, is very important moving forward in high school math. So you hopefully, like I said, have it memorized. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Remember that a, b, and c are going to be your numbers that you'll find from your equations. So let's go through some examples here together, making sure you're continuing to take your notes as you're going through. So let's start out with x squared minus 4x minus 8 equals 0. So very first thing you have to do is make sure that you know or have it in standard form, which remember x squared, then x, then constant equals 0. So in this case, that part is already taken care of. The next thing that you need to do is identify your a, b, and c values. Remember that a is the number in front of x squared, which in our case would be 1. B is the number in front of x, which in our case is negative 4. And c is your constant, which is negative 8. Making sure you are paying attention to those negative signs. So b is negative 4 and c is negative 8. Now we're going to take those and plug those into their places in our quadratic formula. So I'm going to rewrite it down here where you can see it a little better. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So we're going to plug everything into its correct place. So start with x equals. You would change this only based on what your variable is. So we have x's. So if this is a t, you would say t equals. It says negative, and then your b value, which our b value is negative 4. Then we have our plus or minus sign, and then a big square root, and then b needs to get squared. So we're going to put b in a set of parentheses. Anytime you need to square it, you need to put it in parentheses. And then minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is negative 8. And then the whole thing gets divided by 2 times a, which is 1. So negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all divided by 2 times a. Now we need to go and work on some simplifying. One thing that you will absolutely need is a calculator or Desmos. I would highly recommend that you use Desmos. In the first step, once you have it set up, there are 3 things that we can do. Number 1, you can simplify this. We have negative 4. 2 negatives make a positive, so we have 4 plus or minus. The next thing that you can do to simplify is everything that is underneath the square root. You're going to figure out what that number is. You are not going to take the square root yet. So we're going to leave the square root, but we're going to figure out what negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 8 equals. So I'm going to go to Desmos. Desmos or your calculator, but I would recommend Desmos. You are typing in exactly how it's written, what I have circled, not the square root. You need to make sure your b value is in parentheses. So we're going to do our negative 4 in parentheses and then squared. Remember that you can come down here for the squared symbol also, or it's the little caret button that's on the 6, and then your 2, minus 4 times 1 times negative 8, and we get 48. So that's the number that we're going to put underneath our square root is 48. All divided by, and then the last thing you can simplify is your denominator. 2 times 1 is 2. So once it's set up, the very first step is simplify your negative b, simplify what's under the square root to get this number, and then simplify your denominator. Now we're pretty much going to do one thing at a time. The next thing we're going to do is figure out what the square root of 48 is. So we keep 4 plus or minus, and we can come back to Desmos, and we're going to figure out what the square root of 48 equals. Now, anytime you get decimals, I need you to round to hundredths, which remember, where'd my screen go? Which remember, hundredths is 2 decimal places. So we're going to say 6.93 because this 8 makes it round up. So 6.93. That's what the square root of 48 equals. And then all divided by 2. Now in the next step, we're not going to do any simplifying. We're just going to take the fact that this has a plus or minus sign. So this is where your 2 answers come from. Remember, you're supposed to have 2 answers. So one time it says x plus 6.93 divided by 2. And the other one says 4 minus 6.93 all divided by 2. And now we can type this into Desmos. You need to type your numerator at the top in a set of parentheses. And then you could do dividing by your denominator of 2. So 4 plus 6.93 in parentheses divided by 2, so that it looks like this. So that 4 plus 6.93 is all on the top, divided by 2 gets you your answer. Remember, we're rounding everything to hundredths, so 2 decimal places. So 5.4, that's 5, rounds a 6 up to a 7. So 5.47. 5.47. And then the only difference is we need to now change it to a minus sign. So I can come back here, I can just type in this exact same line and type it in as a minus sign to get my other one. And this time, remember, same thing, round to nearest hundredths, 2 decimal places. This 5 rounds the 6 up, so negative 1.47. And there are your answers. Now, you can also check this using Desmos when you're done. Okay, so after you have all your work, you've shown all your steps, you can find your answer on Desmos to see if it's correct. If I come back in here, I can delete all these out of here. You type in your original equation, x squared minus 4x minus 8 equals 0. Remember, we found our roots or solutions or zeros are x-intercepts. So we can check to see if our answers that we got match the x-intercepts. So negative 1.47. Now that says negative 1.464, which wouldn't round it up, but because we've done some rounding, it's okay as long as it's only off by 1 for the very last, for that 100th term. So if you have negative 1.46 and your answer is negative 1.47, you're okay. Our other number was 5.47, same thing, we're off by 1 for that last 100th place. 5.46, then we had 5.47, so we are good. Our answer is correct.